Hello, good morning, and welcome to Sunrise Daily. Today, I am Chamberlain, so reporting live from Abuja.
Good morning. I like the fact that he's used to that now.
I'm trying.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Maokwe Ogun-Yusuf.
Oh dear God, it's very, very interesting. That's not something you say in Lagos. Well, I am reporting live from Lagos. My name is Ayo Makinde. Welcome to the show this 22nd day of November 2022.
I mean, how could you say that in Lagos? Because when you're used to, you just take certain things for granted, and who can blame anyone for that? But I guess things happen. You know what they say about time, things change. And speaking about things changing, it does appear as though the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management says something has changed in her budget because now, there happens to be this 206 billion naira question, this component in her budget, which is senator in the budget defense, which was going on here. So they did ask her about that, and she was like, well, she was a bit surprised about that provision, that clause, that component in the budget, saying, well, she doesn't know anything about it, that they need to ask the Ministry of Finance. And in some of the narrative out there is that she had mentioned or requested a certain kind of project. Part of it was for the Northeast Development, concept project, but it wasn't approved for the 2022 budget. Only for her to see that component and says, whoa, the money is now times 10 of what was initially mentioned, and that, well, they needed to ask the Ministry of Finance. But it's not exactly clear as well to us all here in terms of, to me, for instance, in terms of how these kind of things happen. Or better still, maybe we should just get to listen to it and get some perspective, because, this session is still going to continue to find out how do these things happen, because you're talking about 206 billion naira, not million naira. But again, let's listen again and get it in context.
Yes, we made mention of the project for the 2022, which was not released, and we said part of it is for the NAPS project and part for the NEDC. But the money was not released, and now we have seen it reoccurring by almost tenfold, and we're going to also clarify from the Federal Ministry of Finance to know why this increase, despite the fact that the previous year the money was not even released for the project. I cannot really give full details of how this amount is going to be utilized, because it's something that was negotiated between the Federal Ministry of Finance and the World Bank.
We cannot continue to borrow money and plunge this country into debt for our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren to come and pay without investing in what they will see. Chairman, I want to move a motion that the Minister of Finance should appear before this committee to furnish this committee with the full details of what they intend to do with 206 billion naira in 2023 budget. Now that the minister have said that she is not in charge of negotiation, of course she is not. The Minister of Finance is. We invite the Minister of Finance to appear before this committee so that she'll tell this committee what he intends to do with this 206 billion naira in 2023.
So a number of things come up here. Sometimes, yes, there could be, some sort of missing link in things, but you would expect that these kind of things will be sorted before the budget presentation, because the ministers have a lot of aides, assistants who help them go through all those things to make sure that they are properly prepped and ready to appear before that committee to present and defend their budget. Because if they get it wrong, well, in an ideal situation, the budget could be turned down. Yeah, so I deal advisedly. But at the same time, and you also get to ask yourself, so is she seeing the budget or all of that page or that session for the first time while it was raised? So there are just so many questions about all of this. And how long are we going to keep seeing this kind of discordant tunes within ministries? It doesn't send a good picture in terms of how government is conducting its business, because you would have thought they are supposed to be on the same page to move the country forward and advance policies that will impact the people, which is the intention. I mean, when you hear the president say they intend to move 100 million people out of poverty, these are the kind of narratives that you expect every department, MDAs, will be on board and run with and not have this kind of mix-up. But like 206 billion, well, I guess, I don't know.
You know, Chairman, I first of all do not, I really do not like to, you know, criticize, will I say, I don't want to say criticize ministers, but, you know, it's sad to see that the leadership, I must say this, the leadership of the Minister for Humanitarian Affairs hasn't inspired the confidence that a lot of people thought she was going to inspire when she was appointed. There's a lot left to be desired in terms of how she's led that ministry. And that ministry has come to light under many important, will I say, looking for the right word now, but under many important circumstances in our country. Yeah. We saw how COVID impacted Nigeria and how, you know, the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs was needed to intervene. Now she might say she did her best, and she was saying she personally distributed monies to people who needed them. There was a school feeding program, and there are questions as to how that, you know, went on as well. There have been a flood in many states now, and there have been questions as to the capacity, because now we understand that NEMA is now domiciled in the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management. We've seen many areas of this country turn virtually to IDP camps. You know, almost every single state, if you were to check, perhaps 2/3 of our states have one IDP camp for one issue or another, perhaps owing to communal conflict as a result of security displacement. So there have been many areas where the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs effect, or will I say, looking for the right word now, but where their presence was needed to be felt, and it was inadequate, underwhelming, so to speak. But that is on the one hand. Let's leave that aside. In terms of looking for monies to carry out, some people will say this is one, you know, big lock, because most times ministries, departments, and agencies are looking for how to get a bigger share of the budget. So all of a sudden, we see 206 billion naira, which you know nothing about, which miraculously appeared for the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. We know that, yes, before now we've talked about budget padding. You know, people trying, and this collusion happens not just you know, within the executive arm of government. It also happens when the budget gets to the National Assembly. So you find that members of the National Assembly are also looking for ways to insert their own projects into, and then there's some collusion with members of the executive in some instances, and, you know, these things are imputed. Now, she says she knows nothing about this, and it was in the 2022 budget, the funds were not released, and it was a tenth of what she's currently saying. So maybe that was have been 20 billion, 20.6 billion, thereabouts, if we're looking at a tenth, and it was not released. Now it's been put in the 2023 budget, and it's 10 times, and she knows nothing about it. And this is something that the Ministry of Finance is supposed to be doing with the World Bank. I'm a little curious as to how the World Bank and the Ministry of Finance can be planning something for the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, and the minister is not aware. It's all very odd, but I think that this is precisely why you have a budget defense. And it's a good thing that members of the National Assembly, while looking through this, have picked it up. We've seen increasingly ministers, heads of MDAs, even our military chiefs have been invited to come and defend certain aspects of the budget. And there has been no question of people not showing up. Before, in the past, there used to be questions of whether or not the ministers will come. Sometimes they complain, sometimes they will not show up, or sometimes they will send their subordinates to go and defend the budget. But this time around, it does look like perhaps the National Assembly means business. In terms of also trying to get the budget done on time, because don't forget that there's now been this new cycle introduced where the 2020, well, it doesn't usually happen like that, but they try to pass it before the end of the year so that by the 1st of, it should kick off in January. That's what should happen. But many times, many aspects of the budget, it doesn't kick off until perhaps maybe sometime in the year, so that there can be a full realization, especially the capital component of the budget as has been approved, because oftentimes what you project is not exactly what happens. So you might budget 10 billion for something, and maybe all that you're able to realize within that period is 5 billion. But it's a good thing that the defense has worked for what it needs to work. There have been issues that have been identified, they are being raised, and they're being called to question. So we look to see what the resolution of this will be. I hope it will not just be one of those issues that will be highlighted, and after a while it is swept under the carpet. It will also be good to see the Minister for Humanitarian Affairs take on questions. It will be good to see how she defends, because to be honest, as a journalist, it will be very good to see the Minister for Humanitarian Affairs defend the work of her ministry. She is the first minister to head such a ministry since it was created. And so far, so good. There are so many aspects that this ministry needs to be intervening in, and we haven't seen it pull the weight that it needs to pull in terms of helping a lot of Nigerians who find themselves in situations of distress. Jimmy.
Well,
shall I say Ayo?
Yes. Well, two things just, come straight to mind for me. One is the fact that, just as that House has spoken, that committee spoke, let's see and expect that the minister will get an invitation indeed, because what the senator said, there was just a proposition that the minister should be invited. Let's hope that the minister has indeed been invited so she can at least make her own statement. And if it is something that happened under within the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, and the minister doesn't know, I guess some questions also need to be asked. The second point that comes to me readily is, hey, we often talk about the yearly Auditor General's report. Yes, Chamberlain, I'm back there again. The reason is that is like a review of the budgets. When you give allocations to organizations, do this, do that, do you really do the things that you are asked to do before we give you money to go and do something else? I think for me, that's what's important here. And I'm hoping that this committee, among others, will also be able to address such issues. But I guess, as you said, Maokwe, we just wait, right?
Well, maybe not with bated breath. You never can tell.
Let's just suffocate.
Okay, well, we're going to start off with Vanguard newspaper today as we take a look at some of the dailies this morning. And the big story here is about 2023. APC opposition parties bicker over digital vote buying allegations. I look at some of the writers now. APC planning to transfer cash to 10 million voters ascribed to opposition parties. Alleged ruling party has harvested voters' bank accounts for digital vote buying. Past vote of confidence in INEC chairman. Opposition parties spreading rumors to malign Tinubu. Says APC PCC. So all of that you see on the front page here. You might want to go ahead and check that out. So, but in the meantime, above this lead story, still on 2023, can Sultan warn against electoral violence? So it's important they keep drumming that in the ears of supporters and politicians themselves, because this is not an area that you want to start or encourage anything in. Don't forget, you can take a look at what's on the back page. Lots of sports there, especially as the World Cup is going on. Interesting scenarios depending on whose side that you are on. But that is Vanguard newspaper this morning.
Interesting that a number of papers highlight that particular 206 billion naira scenario. But take a look at what Daily Trust has, and it's totally different from that particular issue. It's about the oil drilling, which is about to begin in the north. As Bauchi kicks off oil drilling in North, Bauchi Gombe residents demand jobs, clean environment, say we don't want a repeat of Niger Delta crisis. Fast-track infrastructure to make drilling a reality. It shall be well with full PIA implementation. That's according to experts. So that's a lead story this morning. Today certainly will be a landmark day for the people of Bauchi and the northwest in general, not the northeast now, the northwest. So we'll see how that eventually goes. Channels Television will be there covering that moment live for us. So you might stay. In fact, you should stay with us to see the very first time when oil is being drilled in the north of Nigeria.
This Nigeria most certainly, Markwe, leads with that story we highlighted that you also mentioned. And this is what you have on the front page of the paper. National Assembly uncovers 206 billion naira smuggled into Humanitarian Ministry's budget. Shadia Farouk, speechless during defense, blames finance counterpart. Senate summons Zainab Ahmed. We'll find the details on page 4 of the paper this morning. Enough said about that already. And under the picture there, undermine G5 governors at your peril. Kwankwaso warns PDP. Or should that be Integrity Group? Wike promises logistics support for NNPP presidential campaign in Rivers. Umahi to commission project today. That story you'll find on page 5 of the paper This Nigeria this morning. That's it for it.
Okay, on to New Telegraph. Ban ex-governors from contesting National Assembly elections, NIDLSDG. Advocates degree as minimum qualification for senators, reps. And then you see this one, this bit which says, governors, nemesis of legislature. Coming from Bachabiamila. So you may wonder, okay. Well, the assembly is winding down, so they may not have as much opportunity to. Well, they're not governors in the House of Reps, they're in Senate. So they won't be able to say that in the House. So but this is his view of the Speaker. Make of that what you will. I look at this at the bottom. So vote buying. CUPP alleges plan by APC to harvest over 10 million voters' bank accounts. And then 2023 presidential campaign, I'll wipe out Boko Haram, ascribed to Atiku. Promises to revive Dadinkawa Dam to boost power supply. 2023, an existential election for Nigeria. Peter Obi says he didn't offer Kwankwaso 40 billion naira to step down for him. Pledges to ensure 35% affirmative action for women. Ganduje assures Tinubu of Kano votes. So all of that you find here. But a bit of health-related story. Repeated stress accelerates aging of the eye. There's one. So a study there.
Your eye gets affected when you're too stressed. Well, look at this. The Guardian has an interesting way of capturing the story for you this morning, as highlighted earlier. Buhari reignites politics of oil in North, close to another election. That's how the Guardian is couching the story this morning. Stakeholders demand transparency, accountability, as NNPC spends state fund for exploration. There's oil in Gongola Basin, but 1 billion barrel elusive. In other words, it might not be up to 1 billion barrel or 1 billion barrels. The question is it
commercial quantity?
Yes, exactly. Do we have it in commercial quantity? That is That's the big question. So page 6 is where you find details. You know, there had been exploration in Borno earlier, in northeast of Nigeria.
Yeah.
And interestingly, Gongola is in the northeast. I mean, Adamawa and I'm trying to remember the second state now that used to form the old Gongola state.
Is it Taraba or something?
Yeah, Taraba, indeed. Thank you so much, Chamberlain. But now it looks like Bauchi is where we're looking. So there is a border somewhere. Will we say this is northeast or northwest? But page 6 might give you details just in case you're a little confused about that. Look at the bottom here. OB in 2023, we need a competent and fit leader. Page 6 is where you find details. Osun PDP enjoins members to pray fast over Adeleke's inauguration. Page 5 is where you'll find details. You have a number of other stories on politics for you. Gunmen abduct over 100 in Zamfara is a security story. It's on page 3 of the paper. But we'll leave it there for the Guardian newspapers.
Daily Independent is next, and this is what you have on its front page. And it's talking education, as you can see. Respect our path or we'll return to the trenches. Subscribe to ASU, one in the FG. Find the details continue on the inside page. It's about time, wouldn't you say? I can't even try to get into the minds of the students right now. Another picture on the front page, CUPP raises fresh alarm over threat to scuttle 2023 election. And look at the writers, charges DG, DSS, IGP to show commitment to poll. Says plot to remove INEC chairman still alive. The question is, who's plotting this plot? Right above the nameplate, Minister disowns suspicious 2006 billion naira inserted into ministry's 2023 budget. Right beside that, Ekiti Assembly boils, gets new speaker, impeaches Aribisogan. Find the details of that continue on the inside pages. A few other stories which you can pick by yourself. That's the Daily Independent this morning.
Leadership.
All right, take a look at our Nigerian Tribune next. Crisis in Ekiti Assembly to impeach Aribisogan. 6 members suspended. 17 members elects Adelugbe as new speaker. I remain speaker. No impeachment took place. Aribisogan. So you have all of that. So the big lead on the front page there. But look at this at the bottom straight. Let me be your next Tafawa Balewa, Atiku tells Northeast. APC cause of present hardship, Akwa Ibom governor. Dankwambo dumps Wike's group, donates 20 buses to Atiku's campaign. So there you go. That's Tribune today.
Leadership has this one, Constitution Amendment. I know this is going to make Ayo very happy this morning. Hope rises as 16 states vote for local government autonomy. That's a lead story this morning. 16, yes. We need 2/3, so that's 24 needed to at least make that pass, local government autonomy. 3 states vote against. Adamawa abstains. 8 states votes needed to overcome hurdle. CSO foresees favorable outcome. So page 4 is where you get to see details. They also have this Ekiti speaker impeached after 6 days in office. 2023, like he did for OB, Wike promises logistics support for Kwankwan. So page 6 is where you also find details. Governors meet on economy, NBS poverty report today. It'll be interesting to see what it is they come up with. And the Leadership newspaper has been following a very controversial interview that was granted by, let's say, former journalist now on the death of another journalist. They've been making an inquiry. They say 2 months after the Leadership inquiry, U.S. Embassy tongue-tied over Caltho's death. So page 7 is where you'll find details if you're also following that story. Let's leave it there for Leadership newspapers.
Yes, you're very correct, Marquez. That certainly makes me very, very happy that at least we're getting somewhere. 8 more to go, as you said, but don't forget, 20 have voted. 1 abstained, as you have already given us details. We're just calling, because that's the first line of defense, the local government system. If it works, we should have less insecurity issues on our hands. Nigerian News Direct is next this morning, and this is what you have on the front page. Senate Humanitarian Minister battle over alleged 206 billion naira budget padding. Well, I thought we were over that, but that's what you have on the front page of the paper. And right under the pictures, Osun Tribunal resumes hearing as expert establishes fraud in election results, BVAS report. Okay, exactly what's going on, the details you find on the inside pages right there. So many other stories on the front page of the paper. Ekiti Assembly impeaches 6-day-old speaker, Electa Deluba. And right beside that one, 13% derivation, Wike's claims incorrect, misleading. That's ascribed to Akwa Ibom professionals. What's that about? The details you find on the inside of the Nigerian News Direct this morning.
That Osun story, when they say expert established in court, well, maybe they are quoting somebody in court, but usually it's up to the judges to determine what has been sufficiently established. So since the matter is still there, that headline may just be a little misleading. Well, take a look at Daily Times 2023. No excuses, blame games if Nigerians hire me. Ascribed to Obi. Yep. That is a big one there. And so, well, it's this season of campaign. So this is all part of the narrative. But look at the writer. Says, job of a leader is to find solutions, deal with issues, build a better country. Denies offering Kwankwaso money to step down for him. And then beneath that lead story, how to avoid electoral violence in 2023 by Khan Sultan. So that's a different perspective. I mean, you see some of the dailies saying they are cautioning electorates, politicians, and everybody, just advising them against that kind of action. So, but there you go. That is it with a look at some of the headlines here today. We will be back in just a moment. Stay with us.
Thanks for staying with us. Well, as Mr. Osita Chidoka joins us this morning. He's special advisor to the presidential candidate of the PDP and the Presidential Campaign Council. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.
Well, it seems like there's only one albatross right now for the PDP, which is the Integrity Group or G5, whichever one you choose to call them. And if you also listen to, you of course saw the quotes attributed to the presidential candidate of the NNPP saying, with him out and the G5, so to speak, not being so stable in the party, how then is your party going to win the election?
Well, first is that we will win the election. So that's the first part. Second part is that the governors, the 5 governors of PDP, led by Governor Nyesom Wike, are an integral part of PDP. So in all their communication, they haven't mentioned anything about leaving the PDP. We have internal contradictions. We have challenges within the party about the direction of the party, how the party should go. And I believe that, like in every political situation, this is an issue that will be resolved politically. Whether we haven't resolved it is a function of the intensity and the strength of the PDP. So I believe that it is something that will be resolved before the election. Governor Wike is a very important member of the PDP. So is Governor Tom, so is Governor Ugwuanyi, so is Governor Ikpeazu, and Governor Seyi Makinde. Seyi Makinde particularly because he's a first-term governor going back for his second term, so he's important to the PDP. We don't want to lose Oyo State. Same thing with the governors handing over. We want PDP to retain those states and continue to enjoy the PDP governance that has expanded opportunities in those states, increased capacity in those states. So I believe that the ongoing conversations, and it will keep going on, but will resolve the contradictions.
Is that with or without prejudice to the comment of your candidate that says he has moved on, with or without the governors?
No, the moving on comment is about that the campaign is continuing. We're not waiting to resolve the issues before we start campaigning. So he's continuing with the campaigns while the discussions are going on.
But then that comment actually attributed, and I think one other governor of Kano State has also said the same thing, that historically, whoever is going to win the election at the center will have to have the most votes in Kano State, in River State, and in Lagos. With, Kwankwaso, that's what he said, with him out of the PDP in Kano, with Governor Wike saying he is not going to campaign for the presidential candidate, your candidate in River State, and of course, Lagos State is out of it. How is that permutation going to happen?
So, again, is the fact that I like those kind of analysis, but they belie the conversation. So, if you look at PDP's electoral map, you will see that Kano, Rivers, and Lagos are anecdotal in the sense that they are very big states in the number of votes that they deliver in an election. But actually, it is the party that continues to win across all segments that win the election. And no party has won the 3 states at the same time. Most times, it's always 2 out of 3. So APC won Kano and Lagos. And Lagos was marginal. It was 45-55 split between APC and PDP. PDP won Rivers. And PDP has won Rivers all through from 1999 to date. And we've lost 3 elections. PDP has lost in Kano and has won 3 elections equally, losing Kano. So it's a matter of forgetting that as there is Kano, there is Katsina. As there is Lagos, there is Delta. There is Delta. There is Akwa Ibom. There is Kaduna. So, and there is Jigawa, a state that may not have the high numbers but have very high voter turnout if you look at historical data. So sometimes we use this anecdotal evidence to deduce some, to make some summaries that are not quite mathematically correct. So winning River State is something that PDP would love to continue to do. We will continue to work to win River State. And I believe that Governor Wike understands that, that his future is tied to that of PDP. Same are the other 4 governors. So I believe the current conversations going on will work towards making sure that every issue, every contradiction within the party is resolved before the election. And I'm very hopeful about that. But as the chief strategist of the campaign, I think resolving that issue is important. I believe that resolving that issue will give PDP the much needed boost as we go on to the election, as we win other states.
So what strategy is in place or is likely to be in play for the unifying? Because one of the 5-point development agenda of your party is to restore unity. In fact, that's number 1, to restore unity in diversity. So there are those who will naturally be questioning if your party cannot unite itself within its members and it's so prominent, so obvious, and has extended for so long. How long then is it going to take your party to unite Nigerians, because that's one of the things they're campaigning on, that Nigeria is mostly disunited now, and then you want to unite Nigerians so that we have a common goal. So if you can't unite your own people within one political family, how are you going to unite a diverse Nigeria?
So I like the fact that you said is unity in diversity. So there is diversity. Diversity of opinion, diversity
it's
of
not what
approaches.
I say, it's what you say.
Yeah,
in
no,
your
that's, I'm
manifesto.
happy that you mentioned is unity in diversity. So there is an operative word there, diversity. Now, you see, the concept of unity is not the absence of contradictions. It's not the absence of disagreement. It is the capacity to build that internal mechanism to use a democratic process to resolve matters.
But without frustrating development. Because without unity...
That's why the campaign is going on, as we're resolving the issues within the PDP. There's always this mentality of thinking about unity as a garrison command, as a military order command. Maybe our years of military rule still impinges on us. No. The important thing is that if you go to any political party in the world, there are broad spectrums. If you go to the Republican Party, there are the Trump people, the Tea Party, up to the moderates. If you go to even the Likud Party in Israel, there are the far-right extremists in the party, and there are those in the middle, and there are those in the left. So is President Lula's party, a Labour Party in Brazil. If you go to any political party, there is always that broad spectrum. But what is important is that despite these contradictions, all of us avow a common PDP stance. Despite these contradictions, our candidates for National Assembly, for State Assembly, for governorship are all PDP and are heading to the election. So I do not see contradictions unifying people as the absence of contradictions. It is the presence of mechanism to resolving that contradiction. So I believe that what is important for us today in Nigeria and in PDP is to continue to put in place that mechanism to resolve contradictions. And that is what Vice President Atiku brings to the table.
Well, the question still remains, how long is that mechanism going to take to work within your party? Or could it be the strategy of your party that since the national elections are happening on the same day, or legislative assembly and executive, beg your pardon, legislative elections and executive elections are happening on the same day, is it part of the strategy that people are still going to vote for your party irrespective, whether or not they campaign for?
Voting is not just a problem. Like I said, voting is not just the only problem. The challenge is the understanding of the role of the party, the future of the party. PDP is going through a serious metamorphosis. In 1999, PDP was a national party made up of the North and the Southeast and South-South. With the Middle Southwest out of the PDP, they all voted AD. And some Northeastern states and Northwestern states voted ANPP. So PDP was basically a middle North-West, middle belt, Southeast and South-South party. In 2003, that changed. PDP became a Southwest, Southeast, South-South, middle belt party and some northern states. By 2011, the country had divided into two. PDP had become a southern party, more or less, losing all the key northern states in the presidential election. By 2015, we have lost, including the middle belt. The PDP was relegated almost to the southeast and the south-south. We had lost the southwest, which had joined in the APC. Now, what we have now in the PDP is what I call a northern strategy, restoring PDP as a national platform that cuts across its base in the southeast, south-south, and takes it to the north again. Without us winning back the north into the PDP as a party, we will not be able to remain a viable national platform. So what is at stake today is the mechanism of doing that. And it's not the first time a political party has done that globally. The Democratic Party, the Republican Party in the US at some point had to bring on what they call a southern strategy. So what we have in Nigeria today is that northern strategy, that ability to win back the north into the fold of the PDP must not be at the expense of losing our base. So it is that conversation that is going on within PDP. And I believe that we will find a middle ground in that.
Well, I'm looking forward to that middle ground, and I'm sure a whole number of Nigerians are as well, because PDP was supposed to be playing, since 2015, the job of, and call it an alternative party, the opposition party, coming up with alternative ideas that Nigerians would have loved. For instance, that report, of course, you are very well aware that there are 133 million Nigerians living in poverty, in multidimensional poverty now. And it is interesting, you know, that you mentioned the North, because you mentioned, you know, getting back the political bloc in the North, because the North, according to that report, has more than 80% of people living in poverty. So what is the strategy then, should your party come to power, to pull these Nigerians out of poverty?
You know, the MBS multidimensional poverty index is very, very disturbing. It's so disturbing. Actually, going by their data, 65% of the poor people are in the north and about 35% in the south. What is even worrying is that oil-rich states like Bayelsa had poor people in the same league with Sokoto, Gombe. I think that was disturbing. That shows you what governance can do to a place. So it's not just a case of revenue. Now, the poverty we are witnessing in Nigeria, the deepening of poverty, is the 7 years of the APC government. The 7 years of delivering insecurity. The 7 years of mismanagement of our national diversity. The 7 years of mismanagement of our foreign exchange management system, of interference with the independence of the central bank, of borrowing without recourse to our national laws about fiscal responsibility, of inability to create a national consensus between the national and subnational governments. So these 7 years of mismanagement, these 7 years of ensuring that our medium and small-scale businesses, which was kick-started by the Obasanjo administration between 1999 and 2007 by creating the SMEDAN. Now, between 2017 and 2021, about 2 million small and medium-scale businesses have closed. These are businesses that power the economy. As we speak today, there is a 300 naira difference between the naira in the official market and in the black market. As we speak today, there is electricity subsidy that is consuming money, that is making sure that our power plants are not going as envisaged. As we speak today, there is a fuel subsidy that is consuming so much money that the NNPC comes to FAC every month empty-handed. And they are borrowing more money to fund the payment of fuel subsidy in Nigeria. So if you look at these items of mismanagement, it will not be surprising that the seeds of poverty has been sown more deeply. Now, what is worrying about the multidimensional data is the fact of the children in poverty.
We'll come to that.
Yes.
But it's something that you said now. I like the fact that you analyzed this, but the last word you used before you raised this child part of it is that the seed has been sown more deeply. It means that the seed was initially sown, and that the fruits, what we are seeing now, are the fruits of that seed. And there are those who will reference that these seeds were sown during the 16 years of a PDP government. So what's the assurance? Because you also analyzed well that the PDP progressively lost ground, you know, in a good number of states all over the nation, losing, you know, so one state after the other and after the other. There are those who will call that a memorandum of sorts served on the PDP by Nigerians that we don't want you anymore over the years. And it's not like that indices has changed much up until now. So the question then is, with that seed sown, allegedly or assumably by the PDP, and which is, we're only just seeing the fruits now. And there are those who will say that this government, for instance, is courageous enough to come up with this multidimensional poverty index, which the PDP didn't do, so that we can know the problems we have and face it. So how can you tell, what will you tell Nigerians now to trust that the PDP will do any better?
It's I don't want to go into an argument, but I just want to restate facts. Nigeria in 1999 was a severely poor country with only $3.5 billion in foreign reserves. Millions of Nigeria, the 80s and the 90s were recorded as the lost years, the lost decade for Nigeria. PDP between 1999 and 2007 did not only turn that around, PDP recreated the middle class. PDP moved our foreign exchange reserves from $3 billion we inherited to about $67 billion in foreign reserves. PDP halved poverty. Our poverty rate was equal to that of Southern European countries. It was magnificent what the PDP did in 7 years and continued to do, such that in 2008, when the global economic meltdown happened around the world, Nigerians did not feel it because we had the buffer. What was the key part of PDP? It was the fact that we created synergy between the national and sub-national government to create what we call the excess crude account. So we had money saved from our crude account. It was the fact that we used money from that excess crude account to buy off our national debt. So our balance sheet became clean. This was $18 billion debt buyback to remove $30 billion from our balance sheet. It was the fact that our foreign exchange regime was so stable that the government didn't need even money from NNPC to sustain our foreign exchange. It was such that by 2014 period, rebasing of our GDP, Nigeria had the largest GDP in Africa. It is important for Nigerians not to forget that it was coherent planning. It was the introduction of the EFCC, the ICPC. It was the introduction of the Fiscal Responsibility Act that limited the power of the states to borrow money, that limited the power of the federal government to borrow beyond a certain threshold, which this government have totally abandoned. So if you talk about the PDP years were Nigeria's glorious years, and Atiku Abubakar was critical in those PDP years. PDP was the place that started the full restructuring of Nigeria by privatizing government assets, removing government from various areas of business, and focusing government on developing infrastructure.
I don't also forget that hasn't come without its own backlash. So
there will always be backlash. But what is important is that you are doing something. You are moving. The government had the opportunity to recreate, to follow a template that worked, getting national and subnational governments to work together. This is the power of the PDP. This is the promise of the PDP, that we are going to get the national government, whether they are APC states or PDP states, we are going to align them once again. That's what Atiku Abubakar brings to the table. That capacity to align the states, to agree with the federal government on key issues of national consumption, national savings, on key issues of national security, making it possible for the component parts of Nigeria to have the capacity to manage our security at our local levels. So this is the promise of the PDP, and we're going to do that.
Even in the, you talked about, government at the local levels now. There are quite a number of states that have said yes to the local government autonomy, financial and administrative autonomy.
Just about 16 have said so.
Just about 16 after 20 have voted. It doesn't matter which party is in government anywhere. It is either APC or PDP in most cases. So is there anything a PDP government at the center can do to ensure, because there are those who point to what this federal government has done to ensure that the local government got their autonomy and all of that, but it would seem like that hasn't happened. Under a PDP government, it didn't happen either. So how's that going to be achieved this time around?
So local government autonomy is something that people mouth and do not practice. So if you look at during the PDP years, the issue of local government autonomy did not even occur because, the governance institution structure at that time was such that Algon became an important segment in government in Nigeria. We had programs that was organized around Algon.
Yes.
So the local government, the PDP was such a, Obasanjo was a strong president and followed through with Yar'Adua that state governments were not even allowed to meddle with local government. Now, beyond the legal issues now of codifying it, making sure that this thing is now part of our constitution, no more left to the vagaries of which party is in office or who is president. So that's the progress we are making in making sure that we are codifying it. But even at that, you could say that what is important is the fact that that bully pulpit, that power of a president, that ability to inspire the states, to make the states, APC had about 22 states in Nigeria, to make them as models of what they are preaching is what is making it difficult for Nigerians to understand that beyond the law, there is the moral authority there is the power capability of having a National Assembly that is APC, having a House of Reps and Senate that is APC, having 22 states that is APC, we will have expected that there will be a convergence of philosophy. But because the APC is a special purpose vehicle, it has no moral compass, it has no strong ideological base. What you see in APC, CPC, ACN are strange bedfellows. Those parties did not share much in common. And that has shown in their governance attitude. In fact, if you look at the APC today, the leadership of APC in terms of the party leadership is from the PDP wing of the APC. Both the national chairman and national secretary were former PDP members.
So that there are those who would also point to the fact that your candidate has traversed quite a number of parties until now.
Oh, yes, because, you see, in 2015...
There are those who will point to the fact that, look, he's only out just because he's looking for any vehicle that will allow him to become president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He left the ACN at some point because he didn't get a ticket.
So don't forget that in PDP, in 2007, he was literally banned by an administrative panel to run for presidency in 2007. He went all the way to the Supreme Court to get the Supreme Court to reverse that decision in 2007. In 2011, he contested the PDP primaries. In 2015, PDP announced that they have only one form for presidency, that they will not sell form to any other person. So people said he went to he moved to APC because it was a turn of the North. No, he moved to APC because at that time we in PDP had decided that President Jonathan was going to run again and that he wasn't going to go through a primaries. So he was just endorsed at the primaries. So anybody who wanted to run for president in PDP in 2015 had no choice but to leave if you want to run for president. With benefit of hindsight, maybe we'll have allowed all of them to run again in PDP and Jonathan will have won.
Doesn't that also, you're talking about moral compass, doesn't that also question his own moral compass, his allegiance to a party that says this is the way we are going to go as a party? As a faithful or diligent party man, he should have stayed, that some would say.
He would have stayed, but don't forget that it was the same PDP that set up the administrative panel in 2007. And that is why Nigerians' political parties need to develop beyond the power of the president. Presidents and governors are so powerful in our parties today that very little happens outside of their ambit. So going forward, with the experience of Atiku Abubakar, I believe he will be one of those that will go back to bringing the political parties back to being owned by the people and not by the people in government. That was the PDP before 2003. It was the 2003 election that changed the PDP to becoming, the state caucuses, the state organs of the party stopped functioning as we handed it over to the governors. Now, that handing over to the governors has continued till today. We hope the governors will continue to play an important role, but a president of Atiku Abubakar's stature who has gone through the experience of what a strong executive has done to people who disagree with the president or the governor, will be able to get back the party again to be a mass-led party. In fact, one of my greatest disappointments with President Buhari is that having run elections 4 times and lost, and accused INEC of being part of the heist that stopped him from being president, going all the way to Supreme Court every time to argue that he won. I'm so disappointed that he did practically nothing to deepen the democratic experience in Nigeria.
Well, I guess the APC will have to come and defend itself. But let's talk about education. One of your 5-point development agenda is to provide qualitative education. Looking through history, between 1999 and 2013, the ASU went on strike 11 times. Between 1999 and 2013, yes. ASU went on strike 11 times. I can only point to year 2000 and think year 2004 that they didn't go on strike. Almost every year throughout that time until 2013, ASU was also always going on strike. So if the ivory towers couldn't be stable within the first 16 years of a PDP government, what's going to be different this time around?
So what's going to be different this time around is that we have experience, and we have a man who is committed to education, who owns educational institutions, who understands the power and the importance of education, who is going to fundamentally question our national university model. So university education can be free to those who attend the university, but cannot be free because even when it is free to those who attend, somebody has to pay for it. So the funding of education from primary school, secondary school, up to university, we need to reimagine it and rethink it. So that we have sustainable funding for education.
So what's the plan?
So the first thing to do is to go back to first of all, the university structure. Is it optimal? The ownership, the management of universities. The idea that universities have visitors who have not visited the university. There has been no visitation panel in most of these universities over the years. The idea of other sources of funding for the university and the actual cost of educating somebody in a federal university and a state university. So until we provide that data and look at it holistically with ASU, and then look at our national resources and say, where do we fund this from? I believe that our 9 years compulsory education should be intensified. The 9 years of compulsory education must be free, must be universal, must be compulsory. I believe that senior secondary education must be largely free. The federal government must continue to pull people out of poverty by providing education. We mentioned child poverty in Nigeria. So reversing that will require that education. Now, our tertiary education needs to be rethought. How do we fund it in a sustainable manner? We have put the education tax. We've talked about percentage with, from our national revenues. But if you look at the population of people who need education in Nigeria, you will find that the current funding is totally unsustainable. Now, I was in the university in the 90s when ASU started their major strikes. I remember sitting at home for 7 months in 1992. And the issues are fundamentally not changed. So what I'm asking is, why don't we go back to the basics? And Atiku Abubakar comes with a plan that says, let us rethink our university, the structure of our university, the ability for our students to access university in a cost-effective manner, the ability of our students to have access, not just the issue of the ability to have the money to go to university, but equity in making sure that students from poor homes, from rural homes, have access to education. Now, all this will come together in making sure that our the ASU approach of government just funding the education is done vis-a-vis in knowing that the funding of the university education actually goes into the process of teaching students and not in the management of ancillary services. So I think that PDP has a very coherent plan that will be driven by data. So we will have that data once we form the government.
Well, it's interesting that you talk about education like that. Honestly, if you weren't off right now for a trip, I'd have, what's the word I use now, detained you for maybe under 30 minutes to take it. But we really have to leave, let you go. Yes. Stachidoka, Special Advisor to Atiku Abubakar and the PDP Presidential Campaign Council. Thank you so much for being a part of our conversation this morning.
Thank you very much. Yeah. I appreciate it.
We're back after now. Stay with us.
Events in the past 4 days has suggested a possible breaking news at the Ekiti State House of Assembly. On Thursday, November the 17th, 2022, a combined team of security operatives had taken over the premises of the House just 2 days after the election that produced Mr. Gboyega Aribishogun as House Speaker. The police cited intelligence reports on possible security breach. Earlier Monday morning, news filtered out that Mr. Aribishogun, sworn in 6 days ago, had been impeached by 17 out of the 26 lawmakers in the Assembly. 6 other lawmakers were also suspended for allegedly compromising the process of the election that produced Aribishogun as Speaker, among other allegations. Minutes after the exercise, 16 of the 17 lawmakers headed to the Secretariat of the All Progressives Congress in the state to explain their actions.
Not about me. It's not about fire.
The new speaker claims the earlier election was compromised and in contrast to the party's directive.
That election that you are talking about was actually compromised. Because if you look at the people that are in the House today, also what that sat today, you will see, even when we start asking questions, more than 14, 15, 16 were saying that they did not vote that way.
Apparently, maybe there has been some compromise on that, but that compromise has been wiped by the decision of today. There 70 people voted unanimously for me.
The leadership of the party describes the emergence of the new speaker as consistent with its zoning arrangement.
As soon as the speaker died, we knew there could be problem. So for the aversion of possible problems, the party needed to invite House of Assembly members. We spoke to them. First and foremost, we said they should allow the position to remain in South Senatorial District, where the former speaker came from.
But the impeached speaker will not accept the new development, describing it as a nullity. Mr. Aribi Shogun claims due process was jettisoned in electing the new speaker, and as such, it will not stand. The drama unfolding in the Ekiti State House of Assembly follows the death of a former speaker, Fumini Afuye, on October the 19th, 2022. Afuye's deputy, Akim Jamiu, had acted till last week Tuesday, when the House held an election producing Mr. Aribi Shogun as speaker, after reportedly polling 15 votes as against 10 garnered by Olubunmi Adelugba. Mrs. Adelugba is the first female to ever emerge speaker in the state's legislature.
And that's the issue we're looking at this morning for you. We're going all the way to Ekiti State right now to ask what is going on with its legislative arm of government. Honorable Hakeem Jamiu, who's the Deputy Speaker, Ekiti State House of Assembly, joins us right now, joins us via Zoom from Ekiti. And we also have Honorable Oluboyega Aribi Shogun, who I'm a little unsure now of how to designate him. We have here former speaker, but he insists that he's still the speaker of the State House of Assembly. Gentlemen, welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
Just trying to confirm.
Good morning.
I'm unable to see both of them. It will be helpful to be able to see both gentlemen as we speak with them this morning.
Hello, good morning.
All right, let me start with you, Mr. Aribi Shogun. Can you tell us, because from what we have now heard from the speaker who was elected yesterday and also from the leadership of your party, they say that you were elected out of turn and that not a lot of people voted for you. It looks like there was some hanky-panky in your emergence as speaker, and even your party doesn't seem to be in support of your initial emergence. So can you give us your own side of the story?
Well, thank you very much. I want to say that we are still in a democratic environment, and whatever anybody may be saying, we should look at whatever we practice as democracy, the principles, the doctrines, and what gave us what we have today as the governance process in Nigeria. I want to differ from whatever anybody is saying, that I was not duly elected. The party is one, the government is one. The Constitution is also there for our guidance. Whatever anybody is saying now is an afterthought. And that was why I said in my statement yesterday that I still remain the speaker, because I was duly elected, going by the extant rule of the standing order of the House, at the same time through the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. It was true that the party wanted to impose someone, and they had their candidate on the floor of the House. And we went into election. I won the election with 15 to 10. I was duly sworn in only for the same people to now say that an election was not in tandem with their own thought. The party has no hand in the election of presiding officers of the House of Assembly. And that is what I want the party to understand, that the election, the Constitution says, Section 92 says that if the Speaker of the House of Assembly shall be elected amongst its members, not that the party will come and pretend over the election. The clerk of the House is the only authority in the election of Speaker. And the floor of the House was there live when the election was conducted. Free and fair, an election result was declared, and I was declared. So whatever the party is saying today, it is just because they do not want a particular section of Ekiti State to have the say in the government. We have 3 senatorial districts. And I did mention, when they called us to the private residence of ex-Governor Fayemi, I did mention that we have the constituencies, we have the constitution, we have the standing rule, that we cannot just go ahead and impose on the will of the people. That was what I told them at the meeting. The party chairman was there. All the other former deputy governors were there. When I said, I stood up to say that thing cannot fly, just because we cannot impose people on willing people on the majority. And that was what played out on the day of the election. I scored 15 out of 25. So whatever they are doing now, that's why I regard it as a nullity. It is still in contention, and that anybody who might want to comment on this matter should always refer to the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Ireland. We all pledge our allegiance. We all sign to the oath to protect our Constitution and the sanctity of the law. So, regardless of politics that is now playing out, the truth is that we had done what we need to do as legislators to elect our own speaker. And I remain the speaker until otherwise is proved. Whatever drama they played at the State House of Assembly yesterday is known to everybody that the police led some people into the House of Assembly to carry out that illegal impeachment.
Well, let me get your perspective, Honorable Jamiu, because you were Deputy Speaker when Honorable Afoye was there. It seems like you have retained your position. Can you give us a perspective as to what transpired since the passing of the former Speaker, all right, Honorable Afoye?
Good morning. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Hello?
Loud and clear. Please go ahead.
Hello? Okay, can you hear me?
Please go ahead. We can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, good morning. Yes, yes, I retain my position as a Deputy Speaker because in our party, we have our arrangements, and all over the world, the positions, principal positions in the House of Assembly, they are party positions that are held in trust for the people and for the party. And in 2019, when we were elected into the House of Assembly, the same process took place. The governor then was from the North Ministerial District, that is Dr. Fayemi. The speaker, later emerged from the South Ministerial District, while the deputy speaker, Otobabi Segbeyemi, from the Central. So that is the arrangement. And when later Fuye died, being from the South Central District, 2019 to 2023, but it's so unfortunate that in Ekiti state elections that we usually have, normally the legislation should normally end almost at the same time. That of the governor will end by May 29. The assembly around June. So it's just some few days apart. But because of the court judgment that produced Dr. Fayemi in 2010, that was balance in the tenure was disrupted through a court judgment. So since then, you normally have a gap of about 8 months before the tenure of the legislature will match. So that's the reason for the problem. But it's not supposed to be a problem if people want to be sincere. Because if Fafia had not died, he will have completed his tenure. The argument of Arabi Sogona is very funny and laughable. That when Afuye died, the party leadership called us. And when you talk of the party leadership, it composed of sitting governor, all former governors, all former deputy governors, the party chairman, and some leaders. That is a combination of party leadership. So they invited us because they have seen some intrigues, some moves. And I want to tell you that our House of Assembly has been very, very peaceful in the last 3.5 years. So when the party invited us, they explained that, please, look, let the South Central, because zoning is zoning is taken seriously in our party. Zoning is taken seriously in our party. So they invited us and explained that the South should be allowed to complete its tenure. And Arabi Shogun that is talking within the ambit. Yes, we have to work it out, but the party position must be followed. There is party discipline, there is party supremacy. The same party benevolence Arabi Shogun enjoyed in 2019 when he joined us from PDP. He joined, and he was given a return ticket. Not only that, he was made the leader of the house, even to the annoyance of many people from his constituency, because he was supposed to have waited for his turn coming newly into the party. So coming now here to say that the party cannot impose, the party did not impose. It's an arrangement all over the world. Positions in the House of Assembly, position belongs to the party, and the party determines who gets what. So to cut the long story short, we have all agreed that we are going to toe the party position, the zoning arrangement. That the candidate from the South, should finish the tenure.
There was an election which saw the emergence of Honorable Arabi Shogun. True or false?
Let me tell you, that election was a sham. We later discovered that the whole process was manipulated. The whole process was manipulated, and that was the reason for the crisis in the because members started complaining. About 15 to 16 members started complaining that this is not the way we voted. We later discovered so many things because we set up an ad hoc committee that later found out that process was compromised. And that is one of the reasons for his impeachment and suspension. How if he claims to have 15 votes, where are the 15 now? Yesterday, 17 honorable members who elected the speaker follow her to the party secretariat where we addressed a press conference. The 17 introduced themselves one after the other. Where is Arabi Shogun's 15 members? Let him produce the 15 members. He's the only person who can decode the puzzle. He's the only person. So let him. If you claim that 15 honorable members voted for you.
Say exactly.
Hello.
Was it him that manipulated the process, and how?
Yeah.
I'm afraid
we don't discover that
the connection is a bit faint. All right, we'll try that again. It's really coming in broken.
I'm not able to give you details now. Hello. I can hear you.
Jamil, the connection
Hello?
is not that strong, so we'll try and see how to correct that one. But I think we do have Honorable Arabi Shogun as well on the line. So he says, Honorable Jamil says that your election was manipulated, and that was part of the reasons why they moved against you, and that the party had agreed that it was not supposed to go to you and where you represent, actually, and that was why the party moved against you. So did you manipulate the election or your election as you emerged?
My election was never manipulated. It was in the open glare of the Ekiti people. People were at the gallery. Nominations were made. I was duly elected. So there was no manipulation. The party is only being economical with the truth. They had already wanted to impose their will on Ekiti people. We have 3 senatorial districts, like I said. The southern part of the state had the deputy governor, they had the party chairman. The central part of the state had the governor, the minister, and the ambassador. The northern part had nothing. And these are issues that we have discussed even before that time they invited us. And I've consistently been balanced. There must be equity. There must be. And what happened on the floor of the House on the 15th when I was elected was clearly to show to the party that the majority of our members wish that we have the balance in Ekiti State. We are stakeholders. Well, regardless of the fact that we were brought up by the party, we are still leaders in our respective constituencies. And we have that inalienable right to tell our people, and our people have that also the right to tell us what they wish to happen. So, if the party, in its wisdom, is saying that it was because the House of Assembly member, the 15 members that voted for me, did not adhere to their own instruction, I think they should have a rethink that this is a democracy and not authoritarianism. We are not practicing dictatorship. It should not be encouraged because democracy allows for free will, freedom of expression. And we have stated in our instant rule that elections should be held where there are two nominees. And there were 2 nominees at that point, and election was held peacefully, no rancor. You should ask whoever is there now to say whether after the election they did not come to congratulate me in the office. They all came, even the protesters on Guadeloupe came to my office, embraced me and shook my hand. That was a clean contest. So the issue of manipulation did not arise at all. It was just purely that.
So where are all those? Where are those 15 people now? How come they turned on you?
Yes, they turned against us just because they feel that they have given instruction and we did not follow. And we said it at the meeting where they gave that instruction that we are still going back to our constituency to go and ask our people. Before suddenly the then acting speaker, deputy speaker, called on Monday that there's going to be plenary on Tuesday. So we were still consulting. But just because he was the one acting, there was no way we could say no. Because notice has been sent that we are going to have a plenary meeting on Tuesday, and the election will take place. So it's on the other paper. So if for now everybody is now saying in the party that we disobey the party's directive, in what way did we, when we follow the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, at the same time follow the standing order of the State House of Assembly on election of presiding officers?
What is next for you now? What are you going to do next?
Well, like I said, I've issued a statement. The leadership of the House is still intact. 15 of us are still talking. And we have resolved that if they did not reverse their action, if the police is still guiding the House of Assembly with this illegality, we shall approach the court at the appropriate time.
It will be interesting to see how that is going to, how that's going to pan out, because you admit now that the 15 people who initially voted for you have now turned against you. If indeed they have, who really is on your side?
The 15 of us are still intact. They wanted they wanted to divide us by suspending 7 in their own reasoning. And the seven of us that they said they have suspended, we consider it as illegal. Because in our standing rule, they have nothing to show that they have actually suspended. Even the impeachment did not follow due process. Because I needed to be served and I needed to be given 72 hours to reply. All those things did not take place. They just went in there without authorization, without anybody, just because they have the support of the police. They broke into the assembly and they took charge of the mace, kidnapped the clerk to come and administer out of allegiance for them. So all that took place, we all had it on the video, and at the appropriate time we showed to the whole world what they did, the travesty of justice and the desecration of the hallowed chamber of the assembly that they have done. And the whole world will know whether we are on the truth side, whether they are on the wrong side. So it is still
can
something
you tell
that is
us,
going on. Hello?
Can you tell us this arrangement, this zoning arrangement, even though you maintain that Ekiti North does not have any position, and that's one of the reasons why you think that you rightfully emerged as
Speaker. In the southern part, where they wanted the Speaker to go, we already have the Deputy Governor. We already have the Governor of the party, which is the party chairman, Federal Constituency 1, Federal Constituency 2. They now wanted to add the Speaker because of the unfortunate death of our late Speaker. We now said no. That the northern part of the state, it happened to me in 2018 when Governor Fayemi was elected governor. I was the most senior in the assembly. And they said, because the governor was from the north, I cannot be the Speaker. I agreed, and the thing went to south to complete the tenure of the northern part. So if they are now changing
so the points they are making right now is this, Honorable Aribi Shogun, if you can hear me. I mean, Honorable Afuye.
The Speaker in 2018.
Sorry, Honorable Aribi Shogun, can you hear me? Just a moment. Yeah. Honorable Afuye, we understand, is from the southern, or was from the southern part of Ekiti, and he will still have been Speaker at least up until the tenure of this particular assembly lapses, and then a new assembly is elected. Because don't forget that only recently did the governor emerge.
In 2018, a northerner was the Speaker, Honorable Kola Oluwaole, and when Governor Fayemi came, they removed him and said the North cannot hold the two, and they brought in Honorable Alagbada, who was from the South. He started his tenure on October 11, and by June 5, Honorable Fumini Afuye took over. And by the unfortunate death of Honorable Afuye, we knew that the North ordinarily should have taken that position, should have resigned, just because we said, no, the party has not spoken. But when the issue of zoning came up, I stood up to tell them that there's a northern constituency. We are going back there to tell them. So if they agree, you will know from their actions. And I make sure that I detailed it, that you cannot have the governor in the center, the minister in the center, the ambassador in the center. Then in the south, where you are now claiming that the thing should be retained, you cannot have the deputy governor, you cannot have the party chairman, and still want to add the speakership when the northern part, comprising about 9 constituencies, had nothing. So these are the issues we raised at the meeting they called at the private residence of the former governor. If they want to deny it, they should come out and deny it. And I don't want that Governor Fayemi didn't have in it. It's just that he's a coward. If he's not a coward, he will not go to the extent of denying what he did in his own private residence and within about 30 or 40 people. So I'm still going to take him on that. He's not the one trying to destabilize the State House of Assembly. I stand to say that he's the one. And I'm going to tell him to his face that what he is doing in Ekiti will not be acceptable to Ekiti people. Because he cannot put a governor at the same time, not allowing the same governor to work. We are all witnesses to how he has been manipulating the current governor, and how he has been sandwiching him, not to allow him to speak, not to allow him to do anything.
Has the governor said anything to you about this?
He has been threatening me that he will make sure he eliminates me. But I want to tell him that
has the governor said anything to you about this?
I'm still the Speaker of the state. If he dare say no, then we'll meet.
We need to know, can you hear us actually? All right, has the governor said anything to you about what happened?
Well, the governor has been, because he knew that if he says anything, perhaps Fayemi will take it upon him. Because all along, the leaders of our party, we have Otumba Adebayo, who has spoken with Governor Fayemi to allow this thing to stand.
We're winding down. Just hang on a minute.
But
just hold on a bit. Let's ask Honorable Jamiu.
They are going to defend.
All right, just hold on a second. We'll come back to you soon. So, Honorable Jamiu, yes, you've heard what he said. But when you started in your opening saying all over the world, these kind of positions are party positions held in trust and things like that, what part of our constitution supports your claim? Because from what we see, it talks about members in the House of Assembly. It is entirely their business to elect and conduct their affairs. So are you going to support your claim with any part of our laws?
Just says that.
Honorable Jamiu, can you hear me?
Who shall be elected among the legislators? Go and read it.
Honorable Arishoko, just hold on a minute.
Hello.
This is for Honorable Jamiu.
Yeah. Hello.
Jamiu, go ahead.
Can you hear me? Can I go on? Yes, yes. I heard you clearly. Yes, what I'm saying is that it's not all these provisions that you have the constitution, but we all know that this is the reality of politics. They are party positions. I told you in 2019, the party did everything in zoning, and we agreed, and we went there and work it out. This Archbishop got talking
all right, I'm afraid we need to wrap it up at this point. We apologize for that poor connection. Gentlemen, pardon me, we have to just go at this point in time. We have to thank both of you for coming on. Honorable Hakeem Jamiu, Deputy Speaker, Ekiti State House of Assembly, and Honorable Olugbega Aribishogun, former Speaker of the Ekiti State House of Assembly, who is insisting that he remains Speaker and that if things continue this way, he'll be forced to approach the courts and let the right things be done, as he says. But we thank both of you for coming on. We will be back ourselves here in just a moment. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. Yes, as you see there, Dr. Mukhtar Muhammad joins us next on the program. He is the National Coordinator and Technical Head, Presidential Steering Committee on COVID-19. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, Chamberlain.
And many are wondering, what are they even talking about COVID-19? I mean, the steering committee stopped meeting a long time ago. Many assume there was nothing to talk about. Everything is hunky-dory. All's well. We're all moving ahead. So perhaps we should start from there. What's been going on with this committee? Is it really and truly nothing to say? Everything is over?
Well, that is not very correct. The committee has been meeting. At least we've had technical meetings. The various agencies have been meeting and monitoring the situation in the country. As you know, the idea of the steering committee is to work with the different agencies in government and also, you know, the civil society organizations and other NGOs in the country to mount a formidable response to COVID-19. So yes, we've not been doing the public part of what people see, which is the press briefing. We've not been providing or changing the guidelines and making announcements like we were doing earlier on. And that is for a reason. It is because we really need to have a good control of the situation before we can change the protocol or make announcement to the public. Yes, in the background. Well, the thing is, you don't want to go in a haste, and because there is so much claim, like you mentioned, Nigerians have forged ahead. Nigerians have
not the world, as a matter of fact.
Well, the world has put COVID maybe behind them. Nobody is using a face mask. Nobody is doing the safety measure precautions. But is COVID still around? Yes, there is COVID. Are people getting sick with COVID? Yes, people are getting sick. Are people dying from COVID? Yes, people are dying from COVID.
In Nigeria?
In Nigeria, yes, there are. Even you know, within the last few weeks, we recorded some cases. The reality is that the magnitude of the cases has gone down, not like where we were last year around this time. Hospitalizations have gone down. Mortalities have gone down tremendously, not only in Nigeria, but also around the world. But is there a risk of contracting COVID-19? Yes, the risk is still out there.
That risk, I mean, isn't that risk going to be with us for the rest of our lives? Because it's not that that risk is as huge as it used to be, and rightly so, because that's why the world had moved on from it. It's only if it's in that dire scenario that we can employ those protocols, isn't it?
The world has to move on. We cannot really remain stagnant or remain suspended, you know, with the fears of infection, with the fears of hospitalization or fears of mortality. Life has to move on, but we have to do it safely. And we have to do it under the control. You know, in public health, you really do not rush. Remember, coronavirus is a novel virus. When this thing started 2 years ago, nobody knew exactly what shape it was going to take. And therefore, when you are removing the barriers and when you're removing the restrictions, you also have to be careful. You have to monitor holistically what is going on in the society. And mind you, you said, yes, we are sitting down not doing anything. Mind you, there are countries, there are countries that rushed to say that COVID is to declare COVID is over. But a week later, they came back and they said that, no, they made a mistake, and the technical committees, you know, continue to sit down. So this thing has to be given a whole global approach.
I understand that. So tell us, so are you saying that this steering committee will be on, what, in perpetuity? How long?
No. It's an ad hoc committee. It's a committee that was set up by Mr. President, you know, to address those emerging issues. You know, when COVID-19 became a pandemic announced as a public health concern, you know, in the world. So the committee is working for a certain period of time, and really the committee wants to tidy up the work, you know, hand over to the agencies. The Federal Ministry of Health is capable of doing its work. The Nigeria Centers for Disease Control is really braced up and is strengthened, you know, to be able to monitor. Our primary health care development agency is doing a fantastic job. The states, you know, have been trained. You know, right now, a lot of things are going on. When you have a shock like COVID-19, what you would want to do is to build a sustainable, lasting response, such that not only COVID, if you are faced with another situation similar to that, your country will be able to respond.
We thought that is why we have the NCDC. So NCDC can handle all of these things. So the steering committee doesn't have to exist in perpetuity, because, I mean, when the government winds down, it will be assumed that they've gone with the government as well. So that's NCDC being there should continue from where the committee, wherever they stop. But for the big question is, lots of people have been asking us time and again, why do we still have to upload as a requirement when you're coming into Nigeria health certificates concerning COVID if you're coming in, because other countries have no such requirements, it's just us?
Well, so let me take you back in history. You know, for border control and border surveillance, there has always been health declaration forms. We had yellow fever, we had meningitis, we had cholera. Even during the time of smallpox, you know, all these are things that, made the world to realize that there is this cross-border transmission of infection. And every country has its own set of rules. So it is not true that it's only Nigeria that is doing health declaration for. Many countries are doing it, depending on
concerning COVID specifically.
So the thing is, what we did was the health declaration form was universal. So when COVID came, we all added COVID to the health declaration form. And right now what we're doing is we are now reversing the situation to try to go back to the normal health declaration form without, if COVID no longer poses risk, internationally.
That hasn't happened yet.
Well, so like I told you, it is a process. It's not something that you have to look at the parameters. And I'm glad, to announce now to Nigerians that we have monitored the situation in the last 6 months. And what we have seen is consistently, we have seen a sustained decline in the number of new cases of COVID-19. We've also noted a sustained decline in the importation of cases of COVID-19 from other countries. We have noted consistent decline in hospitalization. We have recorded no mortality in the last 40 days in Nigeria. And therefore, these are the indices. They have to be sustained. So with this now, we are braced up. We are ready, to look at what needs to change in the current regulation. And it's not only Nigeria. There are many. We review this on a daily basis. We work with the International Civil Aviation Authority, ICAO. They provide guidelines about the requirements for other countries. Yes, the developed countries that we know, probably because of their level of high vaccination and booster doses that they have taken, some of them realize that it is no longer required, to do testing, to upload your vaccination. But still, many countries do it. As of yesterday, we have about 85 countries that still require people to do pre-departure testing. We have about 49 countries that still require, if you arrive in their countries, you have to do a PCR test. We still have countries, about 30 of them, that require people to do quarantine on arrival. And this includes Canada, China, even in Africa, a lot of our African counterparts, including Niger and Ghana, have some form of protocol or another. But we understand, we bear the pressure. We know that Nigerians call us, especially people who travel a lot, to say that, oh, we've been everywhere around the world. Nobody is doing this. Why are you still doing it?
Especially if it's, if it's done in a manner that is cumbersome, if it's in a manner that, because as you said, largely within Nigeria, the entire country seems to have moved on from COVID. We now treat it like every other illness. And yes, I might still believe you that indeed COVID is still around. I mean, my experience in the last 2 weeks or thereabout was anything to go by. But indeed, while that is, we do not seem to experience any other thing, even the simple hand-washing mechanism which was in place during COVID and many people thought might be an opportunity to introduce hand washing for good, especially hand washing in public for good. That has also not been maintained. Why is it just this obnoxious uploading of, health requirements that comes up only when you want to travel, not for any other thing, but only when you want to travel or when you want to come into Nigeria? It feels like a stumbling block for many people.
So, Mope, let me just, yes, Nigerians are tired, and, people don't like doing things that are additional, that they see as burden. But regarding the health, uploading that health declaration form, it's not really, it's something that you do under 2 minutes. And you can do it before.
2 minutes?
Yes, you can do it under 2 minutes.
Super longer than 2 minutes?
No, absolutely. No. I'm sure maybe you have an internet challenge.
Almost endless.
So the third is, you look at the advantage and what you gain
I think that's them trying to do it now. See if you can do it in 2 minutes.
So if we don't have that health declaration form, the danger is that we will not be able to track not only COVID, but we are having Ebola now in Uganda and some other parts of Africa. You want to track people who are you know, who are at risk of, you know, transmitting this infection to other people. So with this health declaration form, you will be able to know when the person arrives, where he's going to be located, his phone number, his address, and the system, you know, will pick up between the Federal Ministry of Health and the NCDC to notify the final destination. Whether it's a state or a local government, we have district surveillance officers who will pick up that person almost immediately. Diseases like Ebola can cause havoc in a matter of hours.
Indeed. We know, I mean, we have experienced Ebola before in Nigeria, and thank God for the sacrifices that some of our medical personnel made. Dr. Stella Dadevo leading the team of those who eventually paid the ultimate sacrifice in that regard. We understand that these kinds of things can happen. But if being able to pick up such a thing is dependent on, filling a form, how strong a surveillance mechanism is that? Wouldn't it be more practical to have officials who are on the ground if, for instance, we have suspicion of flights coming in from certain areas of the world into Nigeria, to have officials on the ground monitoring people who come from those flights, rather than having people just generally fill a form which you're not even sure if anybody is keeping track of?
So unfortunately, diseases don't act, like that. People can come, they are asymptomatic, they don't have any symptom. You will not be able to see any signs on them. And they'll come and pass, and they'll interact with normal people. So in public health, what you do is that during that period, those people can still transmit the disease. So if you have this contact tracing mechanism, the form only helps us to do that contact tracing mechanism. And to help, for example, in a plane, if you come now, we know your seat number, we know who is sitting next to you on your left, who is sitting next on your right, who is in front of you, who is behind you. Those people are at risk already. And with that form, we'll be able to track them and monitor them, because they are likely, they can also get infected, during the transit, during the flight, and they can also infect other people. So that helps us to pinpoint the people, because the disease does not occur immediately. If you can find somebody symptomatic,
people only report what it is that they're feeling at a particular time. So if they too are feeling quite well when they travel, aren't they going to be reporting how they feel in that form? I haven't filled the form. I don't know what is, but I imagine if you will say things like, "Do you have a headache? Are you do you feel fine?" etc. And it is how a person is feeling at that time that he or she would report. Isn't that correct?
No. So it has several components. That part is one where you express, the places you have been to. For example, now, any person who has visited Uganda, for us, it's a person of interest, because we know Ebola is being circulating in that area. He may not have contracted Ebola. He may not have any symptom, and we cannot stop that person from coming into Nigeria. But once he comes into the country and we realize that he was, on the plane with someone who had an active Ebola, or after he arrived, he started expressing symptoms, quickly that person needs to be isolated. He needs to be.
Is this form obtainable for those who travel by road into the country?
It is available at our land borders. It is also available. It's a compulsory form, and it has been since 70s. It's not a new.
No. This specific one that the airlines request Nigerians to fill if you're coming into the country, is it required? Do they fill it? Those who travel by road into the country through our land borders?
Yes, it is being done. The port health officers at the border, they complete that form for the persons that are.
Because I've had two separate people who came in and they were not required to fill that form. And we're doing this just to ensure that, look, with any agency that does things to safeguard lives of people in this country, we appreciate it, we understand it. So we're not doing this to lampoon any agency or anything, but it's to see if this is necessary and if it's still working. We asked this because several people have called in and said, look, they requested us to fill this form. As a matter of fact, it was even so long, many don't even know that they're required to fill it until they get to the airport. And so when they're asked and then they start filling, some don't even finish filling. They don't complete the form and say, then they tell them, well, it's up to you and your country. So they board the plane. And then they come to the country, they don't even insist on the form, they pass. So that's why we are, is this still necessary? Because people are not taking it any seriously at all.
You know, for every rule or for every regulation, you know, there are people who try to cut corners and not try to follow it. It's not really something that we're very proud of, but we know that Nigerians like to do that a lot. I tell you what is happening. Our current protocol, what it mentions is that if you are fully vaccinated, you don't do anything. You complete that health declaration form and you submit it, and you're allowed to board. If you are partially vaccinated or you are unvaccinated, that is where the issue comes. Okay, that's why you need to be tested before you board the plane. You need to be tested after you arrive on day 2 and 3.
You still need to be tested before you board the plane?
Yes, 48 hours before, yes.
Because many people don't even conduct any such tests. They can't even find as much places as they do when they are coming into the country.
There is a difference between what is in the regulation and what people actually do. And not only us, people going to Qatar now, ask them. Okay, you have to show your vaccination card. If you don't, then you have to do a PCR test for 48 hours.
That's perhaps maybe a different scenario. But for this one, because at the moment, when people are required to fill this kind of forms, countries don't even insist. I remember specifically that the steering committee maintained that countries that don't require any of this protocol, we equally reciprocate. We lift those measures. We don't require those. We did it when it was in England. We did it with the States. But the form has remained, and people are not complying. But from what you're telling us now, it looks as if the form will stay. It's not going to go.
So I don't know why we are, because completing the health declaration form is something that is good for us if we understand the advantage. It is to protect you, to protect Nigerians, and to protect, you know, people and their families. We only do that. I mean, it has been there before COVID, and it will continue after COVID. It's not that. It's an international health regulation.
What you're doing is enlightening Nigerians as to why that is important. But as my colleague pointed out, a number of people assuming that, you know, COVID has gone with the wind, you know, are surprised to now find out just when they get to the airport that is still a requirement. So how are you conscientizing and still letting Nigerians know that, yes, whilst we continue to encourage you to stay safe in the country, this will continue to be a requirement, so that it's not some surprise that is sprung up on, you know, if you're traveling out of the country, you have a number of things you're planning to put in place, and then you get to the airport, and that is also something that you now meet as a surprise, and maybe sets you off balance, or internet is not working, or, you know, then frustration sets in. How are you ensuring that, you know, you are able to reduce these incidences of frustration? Government is not out to frustrate people, I imagine.
Absolutely.
So if they're not, I mean, how are you ensuring that you address whatever frustrations people feel when they begin to see these kind of situations when they're about to travel?
So we have looked at the situation over time, like I mentioned, and what we've been doing since April is to try to relax, you know, a gradual relaxation of, you know, all the restrictions. For example, in April, we issued the guidance where we said the use of face mask is discretionary, especially if you are in an outdoor place. And since that announcement, I think many people have even dropped face mask altogether. Many people interpreted that. I was interviewed, you know, that the PSC said we have lifted all restrictions. We said, no, we have not lifted all. So it's also that you have to do it in measured ways. We removed restrictions about public gathering in closed spaces. You know, before we said for some places it has to be less than 50, depending on the size of the place. We removed it in April. And, you know, when we did that, everybody now, everything was open. And even before then, people had already, you know, put...
Yeah, Dr. We are still, wait, let me ask, are we still required to wear face masks when we're traveling locally?
No, it's discretionary.
But like the airlines insist that you must, that is a regulation
in
from
a closed
the
space.
NCA.
Yes, in a closed space, it is recommended that you wear your face mask.
So when we're traveling, we have to wear it?
Well, if you feel, I mean, for example, in an aircraft, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. But for the airline regulation, they still require you to do that. For NCAA, what they do is they have very clear, it is not, you don't give that kind of instruction. That is what they made us to understand. That is either it is there or it is not there.
So what's the committee saying?
So we have met and we are reviewing the situation, and we are putting some timeline on it. We are going to lift a lot of the problem that people consider as restrictions, and we are going to get them down, and we'll make the announcement very soon. Very soon,
okay, yes. Because people who have been vaccinated are also saying they still require them to complete the form, even though they've been vaccinated, even with their booster shots. Are they supposed to still fill the forms?
Well, if you're talking about the health declaration form,
they call it COVID form.
Well, so okay, we are changing that. We are removing a lot of the COVID-related. Yes, so that is maybe the information the public needs to know. We have taken steps now. We are making some modifications. We have simplified the form. It is going to be for general use for all other diseases, just the way it was before COVID, and that is what is going to be effective very soon.
Okay, so that announcement is going to come. They're going to change all of those. So we'll look forward to that, so that
they heard it first here.
That's right. There you go. Dr. Mukhtar Mohammed, National Coordinator and Technical Head of the Presidential Steering Committee on COVID-19. Thank you very much indeed for coming on, and all the best.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so there you go. That is the show today. We thank you all for watching. We'll see you again here tomorrow. I am Chamberlain Uso.
Thank you for watching. And yes, Bauchi State is in northeast Nigeria. There's no confusion as to that.
Yes,
thank you so much for watching. I'm Malfoy Ogun Yusuf.
I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful day.